Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another BiZHUB. It's Friday, of course it's the BiZHUB. It's 9:30. Yay! Come on in, come on in. The water is lovely and warm. There's a swim up bar. Find yourself a wonderful position. And just like Club Tropicana, as Wham told us, all the drinks are free. Help yourself. Just go to the cupboard. They're all there. Good morning, everyone. And welcome. Hello. If you can hear me, give me a hello and a hi. How are you in the chat? And we'll get started. Otherwise, it feels like I'm talking to myself. Lovely to have you here. Good morning, Keith. Is that Nikki or Michelle from Mad About Bookkeeping? Whoever. Good morning. Let us know in the chat. Good morning, Sue. Lovely to have you. Good to be here. It's wonderful to be here and it's lovely to see you. Joanna's joined us today. Joanna from Balanced Bodies. Keeping people fit, getting them fit. Heading into 2021, the fittest you that you can be. Morning, Lorna. Morning, Sheila. Lovely to have you here. Angie with her top tips, passion for training. I've been following that every day. Each tip, genuinely. I'm like, that's a good tip. I'm having that one. Fantastic. Lovely to have you all here. We've got a really packed show today. We've got a lot to get through and short time to get through it. So I am going to get started. Hello to everybody. Hello, Fiona and John. Lovely to have you here. Other people will have to play catch up and we will get on with it. So I'm going to just call this meeting to order and just get on with it, Stuart. I'll get on with it. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Friday, it's 9:30. This is the Signal BiZHUB. It's where we come to learn, inspire and grow our businesses. Everything I talk today about is on our website, signalbizhub.org. We've been taking a look at the content on there and updating some blogs and adding some new stuff. So there's some good stuff going on there. So I would make sure that you bookmark that and visit it often. The logins, when you are logged in, if you are a BiZHUB member, give you access to all the past talks and all the goodies that the members area holds. And we'll be adding and updating new stuff as we go through 2021. So it's a great resource and I look forward to working on all of that next year because we've been going through the plan. We've been going through the plan this week. It's very good. It's coming together very nicely. And like I say, every week, please use your common sense. The information we give you in the BiZHUB is for guidance only. If there's a specific piece of advice that you take away, please make sure it is fit and right and proper for your business because all businesses are different. If you're unsure, come and have a talk to us. We'll put you in front of an expert who can give you an absolute definitive opinion about your situation. If we can't do it ourselves, we'll find somebody. So please just use a little grain of common sense. And yeah. With that being said, let's crack on with the rest of it. And today I'm joined, as always and as ever, by some people have called her my sidekick. I overheard somebody calling her my accomplice, which sounds rather nefarious. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for the wonderful, the magnificent, the rather looking prim and proper Louise Eldridge. Come and join me, Louise. Hello.
Good morning, prim and proper. That's my look today. Morning, everybody. Lovely to see you all. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. How's your week been?
Yeah, it's been good. Really busy. As Stu just said, we're really working on the nitty gritties now of the program for next year. Gosh, it's come around quickly, hasn't it? Yeah, we're middle of November, so yeah, we're nearly there, guys. So we will be revealing all of the new program very, very shortly. And yeah, today, Friday the 13th. Lucky for some, unlucky for others. I don't know why that's, I think, you know, Stu said I look prim today, but prim and proper. I don't know, maybe it's my religious coming out in me today, because obviously Friday the 13th goes back to the Last Supper, I'm led to believe. So put in the chat if anybody has got any insights into Friday the 13th and whether it's lucky for you or unlucky for you. I'm going with lucky, to be honest.
I got married on the 13th, Saturday the 13th, but yeah.
Okay, good.
It's just a number.
It is just a number, but important to some people. So put it in the chat. So yeah, I hope you're all doing well. Looking forward today. Let's see what we've got.
So I'm going to share my screen. We're going to go through the intro and then we're going to crack on with our guests because I'm really keen to get into those questions. So let me just share my screen there and we'll just get that up there and we'll crack on. So it's, as always, I know we possibly don't have any guests today, but we want to impress upon people that if you know somebody who is struggling in their business, get them to have a conversation with us. We've got lots of free bits and pieces that we can throw at them and offer them some help and advice. They can come to one of our BiZHUB sessions and find out more about how it works and runs. But they don't really need to suffer on their own. And I know it's really, sometimes it can feel like you're dragging somebody to something when they don't want to. But now is the time where small businesses have to pull together. Would you agree, Louise?
I certainly would, actually, Stu. And to be honest, now more than ever, we've had so many interactions with our hub members, and it's not always about, push your business, do this, do that. It's support as well of, I'm feeling a bit low. I don't really know where to go or what to do with in terms of a win, for example, because nobody really wants to sort of jump in about wins because they feel bad because other people aren't having wins and things like that. But this community that we've got here is really an amazing community because we're so open with each other and we're all in this together. So as Stu said, if you do know of anybody who is suffering, a small business owner who is suffering and really needs that kind of community feeling, point them in our direction. Let's have conversations with people.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely here to help however we can. Obviously, we'd love them to join the BiZHUB. That would be fantastic, but that's not the full motive for wanting to have a conversation. Yeah. And we're more than happy to point and signal resources that we know about to people who need it. So definitely. Yeah, do let people know. Right, so it's not week one, it's week two. It's week two, Louise. I've switched off the wrong slide. It's week two. It's an inspiration session with a guest speaker and a Q&A. So today's guest speaker, if you've lived or set foot in and around Borden, you'll know our guest speaker. Our format, as always, is our introduction. We then have 45 minutes with our speaker. We're going to be interviewing him this time round and drawing out all those juicy tidbits that can help you get through the current situation. Then we're going to we're not going to have any welcome to our guests, but we'll have a quick break and then we'll come back for the meeting format where we're going to have a discussion around accounting. Andy's going to be there. We're going to discuss Q&A with him. So really do stick around for that. If you need the link, we'll get the link to you, but you should have already had the link. But chuck in the chat if you haven't had the link and I'll make sure it's in there before the end of the session. Lou, LinkedIn Local has, I believe, got a very special guest next Tuesday.
So excited about this, Stu. I can't tell you, really excited. So next week, LinkedIn Local. It's a Christmas theme. I know it's only November, but it's never too early in my view for Christmas. Love Christmas. And so we decided, as we're not doing one in December, we decided to make our November LinkedIn Local a Christmas themed. Not only is it Christmas themed, so if you're coming along, Christmas jumper, Christmas hats, Christmas tipple, or get into the vibe. But we have a very, very special celebrity guest joining us. It has been confirmed. It was touch and go for a minute because in quite high demand, this person. So, but they've committed and they're definitely going to be there. We're not revealing who it is until you're there. So come along, don't miss out. But it should be a really good, fun session.
A little birdie has told me that your special guest has currently got a film out.
Yes. Currently got a film, so that's why it was touch and go, because the demand is high. However, realizes how important LinkedIn Local is to us and to everybody in the community, so has decided to come along. So we're very excited. Don't miss it. Next Tuesday, 7 p.m. Head to the website.
I am definitely going to be there. I genuinely don't know. I'm just like, who is it? It's going to be great. I'm going to definitely be there.
Not long to wait now. Come on, guys, join us and come and have some fun. Come and have some Christmas fun and networking at the same time. So really looking forward to that.
Yes. Yes, yes. Right. And this month is all about business support. Now, we say regularly, frequently, and often, you cannot build a business alone. You need business support. You wouldn't necessarily buy an IT system and try and do it yourself unless that was your bent. You'd get some IT support in. Even at times when we're doing web work, we have to get support in. So don't feel like it's a failure that everything has to be done by you, because that way madness truly lies. So November is all about business support. We had the secret to smashing goals. Last week, I gave you some hints and tips and outlined what Mastermind was about, and accountability, how that plays a massive role in smashing your goals. And if you haven't booked on to Mastermind this month, then please do so. It's the last one of the year. And we're looking forward to maybe having a little bit of a roundup about each person's business, you know, where they are, where they're going, what they're doing. So do come along, book in to that. This week is what your accountant should be doing for you. That's brilliant. And then next week is a member spotlight session. Lou, who do we have?
So next week we have Noam Jenkins, Lorna Smith, and Keith Budden, which is really exciting to have those. We never had them talking out before. And so they will be here next week to tell you all about themselves, their business, and just get an insight into what they're doing and how they got to be where they're at. So really looking forward to that session. So please book on if you haven't.
Fabulous. Yes, looking forward to it myself. Then, as I mentioned, we've got members only mastermind, do book. And then coming up in December, we have a slight kind of retro vibe, because we're looking over our shoulder back at December 2020 and preparing for 2021. It's felt like it's never going to end. And we're not there yet. We're not out of the woods yet.
But to be fair though, Stu, I mean, we've been like preparing for these talks already, and there's been some amazing things even during this 8-month period. There's been some incredible things that have happened in our small businesses. So it's not all doom and gloom. It's really not. I mean, there have been some, some difficult things, and we've all had difficult times, but we're hoping to focus on the really good things that have happened throughout 2020. So yeah, definitely come along and talk to us about that.
Yes, so we've got Mark Selby on the first week preparing for 2021, and anyone who's ever seen Mark Selby talk, it's not only the voice, it's the intellect, the mind, the journey he's been on in his life. He is a fascinating character. He once took me out for a meal to mind my mind about local matters and various things, and just to have a chat, I think, and just fascinating. The questions, just the mind, definitely worth coming along for.
I'm surprised you could eat. I'm surprised you could eat, though, to be honest, because his voice is just, you just stare at him with his voice. It's just incredible, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. Yes.
Incredibly well.
And there's the second week is Signal Highlights of 2020. Emma is going to come along and give us a recap, a review, and refresh our memory of what we've done and how far we've come. It's kind of talking about our wins and what our plans are for the future and what things we're doing. So think Queen's Speech, but for the business community of Borden. So that's going to be fun. And then we've got our Christmas BiZHUB session, and that's going to be some that's where possibly Lou and I fall flat on our faces as we try and do charades on a Zoom session.
Don't be pessimistic, Stu.
I'm not. I
reckon charades is going to work incredibly well. I've been practicing already. I think we're going to pull it off.
Yes, but it took me 2.5 hours to get Shawshank Redemption.
All right, it was the first try. We'll keep going. We'll be fine.
So December is about letting off some steam and having a bit of fun, and recognizing that perhaps everybody just needs to take a breath in December and prepare themselves for 2021 mentally and physically. We've been updating, as I said, blog posts in and around the current situation. We updated ones about bounce back loans, so do pop along to the website and gather as much information as you need. If you don't know about it, we've probably written about it, and if it's not there, come and ask us and we'll do some investigations and we will write about it and we'll put something up for everybody to learn from. I want to give a shout out. one of the team members that you possibly don't see very often. She did do a co-hosting stint on the 4th of September when Lou gave her fantastic speech about habits and to-do lists and being organized and getting stuff done. And she got a very good response from our attendees. Was lovely girl called Ellie Howkins, and she does some of the social media and some of the marketing. And so she has been revamping our Instagram. So I want to give a shout out for Ellie because she's been doing some great work in the background. But if you are on Instagram, why not drop us a message on our Instagram at signal_Borden. That's where we post, you know, various things. I did some photographs of a wonderful sunrise coming through the trees, looking out the front through the office window at Martinique House. And she put some great stuff on there, various bits and pieces, some fun behind the scenes stuff and some interesting stuff. And if you've got an Instagram account and you do an Instagram story, we'll give you a shout out. And we've got 1,400 followers and it's going up. I think it's actually now 1,700. I think we gained about 200 last week. We got featured on something that Ellie did and we got a load of followers. So I don't know. Anyway, if you do Instagram and you are an Insta Queen or an Insta King, get yourself along to at @signal_Borden and like, share, do what you need to do and let us know you exist on Instagram. Be lovely to see you there. Do you Insta?
Badly.
Infrequently.
The thing is, my personal Instagram is all about food, to be honest. It's always telling what you follow. There's quite a lot of food people on mine. Right, Stu, let's crack on. We're running out of time. So
win, lose,
wins.
Win, learning, or both. Who's had a win? Who's had a learning? I saw that Gnome has injured herself, so that's not necessarily a win or a learning. But I hope you have a fantastic and quick recovery, Gnome. I hope it's not your mouse hand. But who's had a win? I do know of somebody who did have a win this week. One of our members, one of our Signal residents, the lovely Joanna Hodnott. She was given a grant, came her way. So that's a win. Allows her to do some more marketing and improve her business. So well done, Joanna. Hard work to get it, but well done. Very good.
Let's just have a look. I think Keith Budden, he's finalised the content for his live podcast, GDPR Brexit special, next Tuesday at 2 p.m. Don't miss it.
Yes. Excellent.
Well done, Keith. That's really, really good. Very good.
I think we should share that because that's going to be quite interesting because the other side of Brexit is there are so many unknowns. I mean, literally the variables and the unknowns, if you know about them, are a little bit worrying.
They are. Keith, if you could put the link in the chat, that would be really good. Then people can log on to it. If you put that in the chat, Keith, that would be great.
Absolutely.
Oh, Angie's already got it in her diary. Ahead of the game always, Angie. Well done. Very good. Right.
Oh, it is Gnome's mouse hand. Oh, no. Oh, and she got the marketing work for Portsmouth Fiberglass and starts on Tuesday. Well done.
Well done, Gnome. That's really, really good. Very good.
All of the things that the BiZHUB is, that is learning, putting yourself out there, getting out your comfort zone, saying yes to something that you're a little bit unsure about, expanding your horizons, and somebody having faith in you that goes, you know more about this than I do, and no, we got your back. If you get stuck, come and have a word with us. Yeah, we don't sit there and think, oh my God, I don't know how to do this. Talk to one of us. We'll find somebody to help you. You're not on this alone.
Brilliant.
Good. Excellent.
Oh, and Joanna's just put in, I'm on the last day of my NHS job today. As of Monday, I'm full-time self-employed. So I'll be running more classes and offering more injury rehab support to clients. So well done. That's a big step, Joanna. Well done. And we look forward to all supporting you. I need to have a conversation. I will message you.
Can I have a win? Can I have a proxy win?
Always.
So a friend of mine, you met yesterday, Lou, she came to Martinique House for a meeting with me. She's properly launching her music tutoring business. Like, she's worked with some of the names that you see in the charts, literally worked right alongside them. And she was saying to me about updating and revamping her Facebook page. So I told her what to do. I said, change the picture, update it, put a comment, put a tip on it every day. She is a trained vocal coach, so give people little tips and hints, what to do. Today's a cold day, wrap up warm, maybe suck a lozenge, or whatever. She did that last night. She got 2 inquiries and a booking.
Wow, that's really good.
You don't have to do very much sometimes. No. You just have to show up at the right time.
Exactly.
So I feel like a little kind of a proxy win there.
Yeah, definitely. Well done, Stu. It's really good. And it's great to hear everybody else's wins. It's really good. Keep them coming in. We'll
never
mention them in
tire
our newsletter. And I think we've got one more and then we'll have to move on. Shayna, I've just announced my new practitioner last night and had her first call for her this morning. Wow, that is really quick moving, Shayna. Well done. Really, really well done.
Excellent.
Right, let's get on.
We're going to crack on. Would you like to introduce our speaker?
I would. Before I introduce our speaker, I just want to remind everybody the format for today. We're going to have our guest speaker come along and give us a talk about accountancy and money and finances. We will be having a Q&A session with him in the second session. So remember, throughout the talk, if there is something that you want to ask, make a note of it and join the second session, and then we can have the Q&A with him. So without any further ado, today's guest speaker is someone who is perhaps more well known locally as the leader of the White Hill and Borden Town Council. However, he has a keen interest in business as well. As you will hear, he started his first company in the late 2000s and has never looked back. He is now managing director of a national accountancy firm, and he is here today to explain how he is currently helping his clients and offer you some practical accountancy guidance. A real local business success story. Please give a warm welcome to BiZHUB member Andy Tree.
Morning.
There he is.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing, sir?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm brilliant. I'm over the moon, actually. I've had quite the week, but it's Friday. We're at Friday. We can relax for a couple of days. And then one of my favorite days of the week, and people say I'm weird for this, but Monday. I love Mondays. I almost love Mondays as much as I love Fridays.
Can I break into song? Tell me why I don't like the Monday.
No, that's the opposite. That's the opposite.
Sorry, wrong one.
And you'll be pleased to know that I'm already feeding off your positivity this morning. So thank you very much for the last 15 minutes.
Fantastic. Excellent. So Andy Tree, you're here with us to talk all about accountancy, what your accountant should be doing for you and all the rest of it. Before we plunge headlong into all of that, maybe you could outline a bit of your backstory for us to let anybody know in the audience who you are, where you come from, and why accountancy, and just, yeah, give us a bit of your backstory there, Andy.
Fine. So, okay, in a nutshell, I always wanted to run my own business. I just wasn't sure what in. I used to live ironically opposite the Signal office in Kildare Close, in a little terrace masonette when I was 24 years old. And from that spare room, I set up my first business in financial services. Had no idea whether it was going to work or not. Up until that point, I just worked in trivial jobs. I had no management experience. I paid myself £200 a month for 6 months, while my wife sat downstairs now ex-wife sat downstairs with our new baby, wondering if I'd lost the plot, as I was now sat in the spare room all day, and she had no idea what was going to become of this and whether it was a good idea or not. So anyway, to cut a long story short, a couple of years later, we had a 2,200 square foot office in Camberley. We had 19 staff members, 25 self-employed consultants, and we reached a 7-figure turnover in that company.
Wow.
So
Andy, can I
yes.
just interrupt you and just ask you,
Yes.
I'm just going back, what gave you the courage to give you that push to say, I'm going to go on my own? How did you find that courage? What was inside you to do that?
Do you know what? I just think I like controlling my own destiny. I think I always say, for me, it's not, obviously we all like to make money, don't get me wrong, but actually it's about lifestyle. It's about, when you think there are so many people in this world, and I'm sure we all know them, who spend the majority of their life looking at the clock on the wall, waiting for their working day to finish, spend Sunday evenings dreading Monday morning. you know, it's such a waste of life. And I'm just so privileged and lucky that, you know, since 2007, that's never been me. I've genuinely enjoyed and got a huge buzz out of growing this business, and felt proud of the achievements. And you know, people who said, don't be silly, it can never, you know, get a grip, you know, you've got a new baby, you can't be fantasizing about business, you know, those things were said to me. And I think you have to have some self-belief, and realistic objectives as to what can be achieved. But yeah, so I mean, I guess at that stage I lived in a small masonette. If it hadn't worked out, I could have gone and got another job doing anything and carried on. And that's why I also say to people that when everyone's, you say, oh, wait 10 years, wait till you're older, wait till you're in your 40s, you know, no. I say that when your overheads are low and your responsibilities are low, that is the time to be taking the plunge and taking the risk. Because the truth is, I couldn't just, with my mortgage as it is now, and my lifestyle as it is now, I couldn't just, you know, start a blank page. You know, it'd be much more difficult anyway. So I did that. I did financial services. Very volatile market in those days. I know businesses like mine that went bust, owing millions. So I decided it was time to sell the business at the ripe old age of 29. So we sold the business, and then I scratched my head and thought, what should I do now? So going on to accountancy, obviously I'd had a finance background from university. My main driving force as to why I wanted to get into accountancy was because I'd had such terrible accountants within the financial services business. So, and when you have a bad experience and you scratch your head and think, do you know what, I could do this better, that's when you know that's where the journey starts. So I set up Top Branch Partners, went into business with a chartered accountant to set up Top Branch Partners, now employed accountants of different qualification, chartered management accountant, accounting technicians, etc. And I've grown that since 2012 into a national firm. So I now have staff dotted around the country and clients that are dotted around the country. My operations director, Liam, now runs the business effectively, and Callum, my business development manager, brings on new clients. So it's quite a nice structure now that allows me to be hands-on, but to all intents and purposes, the business does run itself. And I think the key point, and why I believe I'm different from your average accountant, is most accountants claim to be business advisors. They claim to, but actually they've never worked outside an accounting practice, and therefore they have a narrow view on accounting issues only. It's the equivalent of a finance director in a PLC trying to tell the marketing director how to do the marketing, or the sales director how to sell. You know, these are specific skills. So I would say the fact that I'm an entrepreneur as well as accountancy firm owner gives me a different insight in terms of my business journey, and how I've gone from where I started in 2007 from the spare room to where I am today. And then other bits and bobs, always looking for an opportunity. 2017, I co-founded a company formation agent where we set up limited companies online and then sell associated services. So we have an office in London for mail forwarding services and things like that. So yeah, and especially in this year, you know, it's been, let's be honest, the aspects of this year have not been brilliant. So again, always trying to find something positive, some opportunity to come out and say, do you know what? If it wasn't for that year, and it wasn't for that terrible period, and it wasn't for that inconvenience, I'd never have done this, or I'd never have helped this person with that. And I've been helping a lot of clients over the last 6 months with issues that perhaps they wouldn't have come to me about if it wasn't for COVID. So, you know, there are some advantages.
Can I ask you, just sorry, another quick question, just going back to, you're a national company.
Yes.
Has it changed? I mean, how did you service your clients, I'm going to say, in the old world? Or did you have to have face-to-face and travel around a bit more? And has it changed now in the new world?
Okay, I've never worked in what we'll call the old world. I've met less than 5% of the clients. Okay. I don't actually meet, as a matter of routine, any new clients now because Callum brings them on board. The bottom line is, what I've discovered over time is what clients want is reassurance that you're available. Yeah. Reassurance you're available. Now, they sometimes believe that means ability to have a face-to-face meeting, but actually what they want is somebody they can email as they set out in the morning, and they know they can trust that they'll have that reply sat waiting for them when they get back in the evening, or if they text me or WhatsApp me, that I'll respond. I'm very well known in all walks of life as being excellent at responding. I communicate quick, and that's what they want, sharp, quick communication. So a lot of clients, we actually say we will meet them. That's why I've got staff dotted around the country. We can meet people. but hardly anybody ever does want to.
Right.
And we were going into COVID and going into lockdown, we were already set up for this, because we all talk remotely, as we are now in this meeting anyway, and we all do things on remote service, and we all interact with the clients remotely.
Good.
Cool.
Yeah, it's always just interesting to see how different companies have adapted and you know how it's affected them. But as you say, if you've set it up like that anyway, no change there.
I dare I say it almost enhances the business model, because what is our way of doing things is now the way of doing things.
Does that make you a trendsetter, Andy?
I mean, I wouldn't want to take ownership of this, but yes, I guess you could argue that at a stretch.
Good.
I could sit and chat all day, and have done with you, Andy. But I know that we're here to talk about what an accountant should be doing for you and your business, especially during the pandemic. So I'm going to just ask that question: what should or can an accountant do, especially during the pandemic? Well,
there's a big question.
There is a big question for you to chew on. Go.
So, okay, so during the pandemic, proactive communication, I would say this is an excellent opportunity for an accountancy firm to shine and show why you pay them, because I've always been the believer that you're not paying an accountant to produce year-end accounts. You're paying the accountant to give you the advice that goes into that document at the very end. And in theory, the work's being done at the point that you get to that final piece of what I would call administration. So, I mean, we could list through, and I will very quickly, all the types of things an accountant should do generally. You know, if you get an accountant and you haven't had one before, self-assessment, registration for tax returns, ongoing reviews, offering software comparisons, including free options, tax forecast planning, self-assessment tax returns, business accounts, VAT registrations returns, PAYE returns, HR discussions, guidance on financial services, pension discussions, but not regulated advice, ongoing reviews of legal structure. Now, I've brushed past all of those because obviously that list could be sent out in any material later down the line. I want to emphasize in big letters, setting aside all of those standard services, it's being the sounding board, offering the proactive advice, and more importantly, how to save tax and support growth. They're the discussions you want. Nobody wants to pay an accountant. What they actually want is to be able to say at the end of the year, this is how much I paid my accountant. And you know what? If it wasn't for their advice, I wouldn't have claimed that expense. I wouldn't have done this. And actually, goodness, they pay for themselves. That's the conversation you want to be having. So, I mean, in you know, more than ever, this is the time to be tightening our belts. So, you know, it's worth noting that common expenses that are missed by sole trader businesses are sometimes the home working expenses. So you can claim a HMRC actually says, I quote, you will need to find a reasonable method of dividing your costs. For example, the number of rooms you use for your business and the amount of time you spend working from home, which is open to reasonable interpretation. And so you've got heating, electricity, council tax, mortgage interest or rent, internet or telephone use, and it all adds up if you actually look at that. And if somebody is using, you know, part of their property for storage, part of their maybe they've got lots of business materials in the garage that are taking up space, and you know, all these things can be factored in. Business travel costs is a big one that people forget, because they forget to make a note of the journeys that they've been on and the business journeys they've been on, and then scratch their head at the end of the year trying to work out what they've done. You know, if you pop down to Tesco to buy a new biro pen to use in the business, and that's a business journey. You know, if you've gone to Martinique House to pick up your mail because you've got a mail forwarding mailbox, that's a business journey. Again, it all adds up. Insurance. And training that's relevant to the business, and business memberships is sometimes something that's forgotten. I don't know if you had any questions there before I go on.
No, it was an observation about the journeys and recording the journeys. I calculated last year my journeys to Martinique House. I'm literally by car about 4 minutes away from Martinique House. I can get there within a song on the radio sometimes, if it's a long song. And when I calculated how many miles I'd done backwards and forwards, I was absolutely staggered. It was over 250 miles. Yeah. And that's, by the time you've added that in, that's a that's between 100, 200 quid's worth of additional expense that you can claim back. And you're right, if you're not being told, look, you can claim for this, even if it's only 100 quid or 200 quid, those add up over time. That's an extra 200 quid. If somebody came to you and said, would you like 200 quid? Undoubtedly, every one of us in the room would say, yes, please, thank you very much. What's the catch? But it's like the £200 doesn't exist. So, oh, well, if I don't claim for it, it doesn't matter.
I think it becomes even more, if somebody is a higher rate taxpayer, then obviously any expenses are actually, coming off coming off higher rates. But even on the lower rate tax band, you would be paying 20% tax and national insurance on that. It's just always worth, making note of these along the journey. Is that I mean, different accountants have different ways of doing things, but nobody likes paperwork. I mean, I certainly don't like bits of paper floating about. And you can get software like Receipt Bank now, whereby literally you've got the receipt, you've got the invoice, you just put it into the system and forget about it. So it enables people to be very disciplined, even if disorganized. So there's all sorts of ways you can do it. I think I wanted to talk specifically, obviously, on government support and obviously during this COVID period, different examples.
Well, I was going to ask what small business owners can do right now to improve their business outlook, and if that includes like looking at the government grants. Fire away.
Well, absolutely. I mean, look, some of what the government, this is my opinion now, some of what the government has done has been very good at very short notice, unprecedented, and some of it has been not so good. I mean, I believe the majority of hub members are sole traders, and actually, I think the sole trader scheme has been, I think it's been reasonably generous. It's certainly been in line with the furlough scheme for employees, and it's allowed sole traders to continue to work. What hasn't been so good is support for limited company directors, where there's no support for the dividend aspect of income. As I'm sure anyone here who's a limited company will know exactly what I'm talking about. And you can't furlough yourself under some circumstances. And if you do furlough yourself as a director, you're not even allowed to work on the business at all. And apart from statutory legal filing duties, which means in theory, if you answer the phone to someone calling you to say, I've got a job I'd like you to do, you're breaching your own furlough, which, it's the equivalent of telling somebody on benefits that then we're going to take your benefits away, not if you find a job, but if you start looking for one. I mean, that's how ludicrous, in my opinion, that is. The big downside and the big drawback, and I don't know how many members this affects, is of course the cut-off for the self-employed scheme. So it's absolutely fantastic if you met the deadline, if you were trading in the 18-19 tax year and you showed nice healthy profits in that year and the years before, then you're getting quite a good grant. If you started more recently and now you're really struggling, then it would seem that there's very little support available in terms of grants, which is why I wanted to give a good example. And I'm not sure whether accountants will have advised this or not, but it's worth noting.
Okay.
So,
all right.
So I'll read you my example. So Mrs. Smith set up a business in September 2019. Working from home, it was trading well, and Mrs. Smith was excited about going into 2020. However, then COVID hit. She was not entitled to the self-employed grant because she was not trading in the previous tax year. She was not entitled to business rate support as she works from home. She was eligible for a bounce back loan, but the process was frustrating to prove her estimated turnover, and she was terribly worried about paying it back. However, Mr. Smith had been helping Mrs. Smith with some of her admin and working on some of her tasks. He hadn't been paid anything for doing this. Had Mrs. Smith been advised by her accountant to make him an official employee with a submission called an RTI submission made to HMRC before the 19th of March 2020, then Mrs. Smith would have been entitled to furlough her husband and claim 80% of his salary from the government. And as you may be aware, the furlough scheme has just been extended. So I would say, whilst no accountant could have reasonably predicted that the furlough scheme would be given a 19th of March deadline, and therefore an accountant wouldn't have known to give the client that advice, the scheme has just been extended for employees, where an RTI submission was made on or before the 30th of October of this year. And therefore, I would suggest that proactive advice on that's a good example of where proactive advice should have helped in this scenario, especially when the government have announced that this furlough scheme will go into the first part of 2021. So in a nutshell, the business owner wouldn't have been able to claim any grant, but if they're employing a family member or their spouse to do some work, legitimate work for them, and they're paying them a small salary or any salary, then they could have claimed 80% of that salary by furloughing them. So it's just little things like that it's worth. You know, I've been doing update emails to clients, to all our clients, just again pointing these things out, because that would have, I would suggest that would make a huge amount of difference to people who could have benefited from that.
Can I just interrupt there, Andy? So with regard to people, because there are people in our community that find themselves in the situation that they are unable to claim anything. Is there anything available for the people that have fallen through that net or not?
Okay, so that would move on to the bounce back loans. Right. So the government solution, what appears to be their solution for anybody who has completely fallen through the cracks, i.e. they can't benefit from the furlough scheme, the self-employed scheme, they can't benefit from business rates, that side of things, schemes from local councils, would appear to be the bounce back loan, unless you consider universal credit to be the answer. So bounce back loans, in a nutshell, are the government backed loans where your business bank. I should just say, actually, Keith's just kindly commented that EHDC do have discretionary grants available there. I know that's something I've mentioned to the hub previously, that's then been circulated by email. I wasn't aware there was any more, but it's always worth checking and keeping up to date, because I know that they were changing. I understand they were changing their criteria to try and meet with what was going on in terms of people being able to claim and like you said, slipping through the cracks. So it's always worth a continued dialogue. And again, this is a fast-moving situation. I mean, based on what EHDC were doing, I've advised all my clients to contact their local councils that are on their council tax bill to ask the question.
Yeah,
you know,
I know.
Doesn't hurt to.
Yeah, I know that Emma is very involved in the funding, etc., and she's just put in there into the chat as well that there is additional funding, but we've got no details as of yet. As you say, people should just keep up to date with what's going on with that. So
yeah, no, sure. So bounce back loans. Basically, the government are personally guarantoring loans of 25% of turnover. Up to £50,000. So basically, if you're a customer with your business bank, you can apply for a bounce back loan, and the bank are likely to grant it to you on the basis that if you default, the government will basically pay it.
But is that based on the turnover though, Andy? So if they haven't got the turnover from the previous year, because then would they still not then qualify for the bounce? Forgive my ignorance, but I'm just asking the question.
No, please ask the question. So the rules say specifically the most recent turnover or a predicted turnover if there is no filed turnover. So limited companies, of course, can apply, and a limited company who hasn't yet filed formal accounts, it would be a predicted turnover. There is some ambiguity as to how this should be calculated. So, for example, if you've only been trading for 1 month, you're predicting, it is very open to interpretation and how COVID might have affected it and what might have happened. So this is a personal view. Don't hold me to it, but I don't really know how you would how a bank would claim that your predicted turnover was. I guess if you say you were going to turn over 200,000 to get a £50,000 bounce back loan, and realistically, beyond all reasonable doubt, you were only going to turn over 5k, I guess there could be an argument, but it's very open to interpretation. I've just seen a question pop up saying about, do you need a business account? Every bank has a slightly different take on this, but I believe look at your own bank's website. Some banks are saying that if you're a sole trader that's effectively been using your personal account for business purposes, as long as you can prove that you were in business, and that you can prove the transactions, that they will still give you a bounce back loan. So I would go to your bank. The official guidance is to go to your own bank first, and then on from there if you have trouble with that. The key here is that no personal guarantors if you're a limited company. So unless you're not personally tied to the debt. Now, sole trader is the business. So this is where obviously so by virtue of being a sole trader, you are responsible for the debt. You can't separate yourself from the business. But a very important point to note is lenders are not permitted to take personal guarantees or take recovery action over a borrower's personal assets, in brackets, such as their main home or personal vehicle. So what this basically in theory means, I read this to mean, is that if a sole trader takes out a £50,000 bounce back loan and defaults, and their only assets are their house, their car, and a nice gold ornament that they've got up on the wall, that in theory they could lose the gold ornament, but not the house and the car. That's how I read it. Now it does then lead on to the question of, does that mean that the banks are not permitted to bankrupt a sole trader for not repaying the bounce back loan? Because bankruptcy would result in the personal assets being taken. So there is no answer to that. In fact, there's the $1 million question. Honestly, I'd be a billionaire if I'd been asked, if I had £1 for every time someone asked me this year, what's going to happen next year when people default? What's going to happen to limited companies? Are people going to get away with defaulting, or are they going to be hammered hard? Nobody actually really knows. On one hand, you would argue the government just won't have the resources in the bank to pursue people, and that the banks have got no reason to want to, because they're going to get the money back from the government. On the other hand, you would argue that the banks and the government want to send a signal out that it's not easy to default. So we'll have to wait and see. It's also worth noting the second point. There's a whole website. We can give you the link that goes through all the criteria. I mean, you can put it on the chat if you want. It's www.british-business-bank.co.uk, and then you can find. I have the full link here, and Stuart, I've already sent it to you, so you could post that. And that gives the full terms and conditions and criteria and question and answers. But I would just draw your attention to one more aspect of it. So we've all been reading. If you Google, you'll read about people who have taken out a £50,000 bounce back loan and gone and bought a new car the following day for 50k. And say, well, it's okay, it's no problem, because I'm not, I don't have to pay back the loan if I default, so what's the worry? The rules do say the business must confirm to the lender, so this is within the contract you would sign, the business must confirm to the lender that the loan will only be used to provide economic business benefit to the business. For example, providing working capital, and not for personal purposes. That said, of course, if you're a limited company, your salary is not a personal benefit. It is something that the company is paying you to do your job. So a salary is considered, I understand, to be acceptable if it's so again, going back to my example earlier, paying a spouse a salary to do some work would be an acceptable use on the basis that it's a bit for business purpose. If you suddenly start paying your spouse, a large sum of money when they weren't previously being paid a large sum of money, using bounce back loan money, I would suggest somebody could later criticise that if you ever became insolvent. But sensible usage is okay. And again, if you're a sole trader, you are the business. So whatever's left over is ultimately your money anyway. So the loan is being given to you. But it's just to bear that one in mind. I would say that the people who are going to get unstuck next year are the people who default, and it doesn't take a genius at the bank to look at their bank statement and see that they've just taken the mickey. So I would suggest probably they'll be doing a paper sifting exercise on like that. So as long as somebody's genuinely been trying to run their business, I would suggest. I would not suggest, and although I can't guarantee this, that the banks or the government are going to attempt to do anyone over who has legitimately attempted to run their business and due to the circumstances of COVID has been unable to bounce back as the loan has suggested. Right.
Gosh, some really good information there. Thank you, Andy.
Sorry, I know I'm doing a lot of talking.
No. That's why you're here.
That's what we need. So that's really interesting.
I mean, for what it's worth, my views are that it's unfair that those who slip through the cracks and are forced to take out a loan are going to, have to pay it back, or should, or at least on paper have to pay it back. I would say it's worth noting, by the way, even if people are thinking they don't need a bounce back loan, the deadline to apply keeps getting extended. It was it November the 4th, then it became the end of November, then it became the end of December, now it's the end of January. It's no good if you come to February and think, oh dear, I wish I'd taken out a bounce back loan. It's too late. Now, there's no harm in taking one out if you're eligible, because you don't pay any interest for the first year, by the way. There's no repayments until a year after you take out the loan. So worst case scenario is you take one out, stick it in your savings account and pay it back after a year. You've lost nothing. In fact, you've gained a few pence for that. So I think that's worth noting, that if you're eligible, it doesn't hurt to take it out.
Is there was another clause as well, I seem to remember, that you can top up as well, can't you? If you've taken some, you can now apply for more if you haven't taken the full quota. Is that right?
Correct. So initially, whatever you applied for, that was it. So if you were eligible, say your turnover is £100,000 and therefore you're eligible for £25,000, but you only apply for 10, you could have applied for 25, you only applied for 10, you got your 10, and if you run out of the 10, that's tough, you can't reapply. Now they've changed it, so you can top it up to what you are entitled to. So that example, somebody who'd already received 10 would be able to now apply for another 15 to get up to their 25%. It's worth noting as well that the cap is still 50,000 in total, though. So regardless of turnover, it's 50,000 in total.
I think that's really great on the bounce back loans. And obviously we're going to have a Q&A in the second session. So if people have still got more questions on the bounce back loan, they can ask specific questions relating to that.
I think as well, if I could just add quickly on because of the fear, and a lot of people have, I've got clients who are stressed about paying it back and worrying about paying it back. And the good news is that anyone who takes out a bounce back loan from now onwards, accountants will know in May, because the scheme started in May. So let's hazard a guess that somebody somewhere is going to default in May, and the defaults will start coming through. And so May, June, July, August, September, October, we'll have a good idea by this time next year what has already happened to the people who have defaulted, and therefore we'll be able to give advice to anybody who might find themselves panicking about that situation. I should say as well that the repayment period was 6 years. Now they're saying it can be 10 years. They're saying they can offer interest-free payment breaks. The government and the bank appear desperate to try and avoid people defaulting and be reasonable and accommodating, because it's not in their interest, obviously, for the business to go bust. It's certainly not the bank doesn't care because they get the money from the government. It's not in the government's interest to not try and support those people to repay the money.
There's a bigger issue if lots and lots of little businesses are effectively run out of business, because they're going to end up falling back on government support anyway.
Well, quite. I mean, obviously, I do appreciate that I can be heavily critical of the government in many ways in terms of some of these schemes, and people have fallen through the cracks. Annual payroll scheme where directors pay themselves once a year, found themselves ineligible for the first furlough scheme. Don't think it affects many people here, so I won't go into the detail, but I wrote to the Treasurer about it. I was never got a reply, but I was so incensed about how people were being treated. But I guess the thing with the bounce back loan scheme is it's easy to administer, and it's based on self-assessment of turnover. The banks only have to verify ID for anti-money laundering reasons. They don't have to verify the income. Although I do understand that banks are now asking more draconian questions to prove income to stop fraudsters from stealing the money. I would put to the banks, it's a little late to be introducing measures now. I think the fraudsters that we read about in the newspapers who are setting up fraudulent companies, I think they did that back in May. A little bit late now, to be introducing such measures, but hey ho. So I think it's easy, because sole trader, you have to have cut-offs. They have to be able to reconcile against tax returns. Directors and dividends, they say they've got no way. I beg to differ, but they have no efficient way of monitoring it. Bounce back loan does seem to be the last fallback, but it makes me feel uncomfortable that those who slip through the cracks for grants have got to effectively take out a loan and are technically eligible to repay it, even if later down the line, for whatever reason, that doesn't happen. So yes.
We did get a question in the Q&A and in the chat, and I know we're going to have a Q&A afterwards, but perhaps you could just answer Fiona and John's question about C-bills. How do they differ from a bounce back loan? Okay, so the business loan interruption scheme, just trying to remember exactly what it stood for, was the first scheme the government announced. And that was the scheme where the government said they would basically guarantor 80% of the debt, meaning that the borrower was, if the borrower defaulted, the bank would lose 20%. The application, in my opinion, was still quite draconian. It was pretty much asking for a business plan. I looked through the application. You could borrow more, but the banks just weren't lending. So what the government wanted, in simple terms, was the banks to start lending this money out to businesses. Because the banks were still liable for part of that money if the lender defaulted, they were being very picky with who they were lending to. So it's still available, depending on the specific set. I would recommend anybody
and you can ask specific questions later, but compares against the two schemes to see what might be more appropriate for them. You are allowed, anyone who took out a loan on the initial scheme, I believe, that took out up to £50,000 is able to convert it to a bounce back loan. That's an obvious thing to do, because if you make it a bounce back loan, you're not personally guarantoring it. So yes, I would say again that the not being able to take the house and the car in the bounce back loan scheme, I would say would make that one more beneficial. But it depends. If somebody had a really good business plan, they were prepared to take the risk, they had the credit rating and they had the business plan and the accounts to support it, and they wanted to borrow more, then it would be certainly worth looking at.
Yeah. Certainly more checks and balances in the CBILS from what I understand.
Well, yeah, I mean, the bottom line is this: there's no affordability. The banks are not obligated to check the affordability of the bounce back loan. It's self-assessment. It is relying on the trust of the applicant to be honest in their declaration, and therefore and because it's backed by the government, the banks have nothing to lose. I would put to you that the banks are desperate to loan all this money out, because it's a gap. I mean, if I was a bank and I could loan anybody in this group money, that if you default, the money and interest comes back from the government, I'd be dishing it out like sweeties, wouldn't I? So that's the bottom line, and it worked, by the way. Obviously, in the early days when the bounce back loan scheme was worked, all of a sudden I did have clients saying, "You never believe it, I applied for 20k yesterday and it's in my account today." It worked. So the banks, the government got what they wanted, which was the banks lending. Dare I say, it almost went too far, to the point where it was too easy, and hence they're almost reining back a bit now. I saw at Barclays, a client got some questions from Barclays the other day, asking them to prove all sorts of aspects about their business to prove that they were trading back in February and they had business transactions, etc., etc. I would say as long as someone's legitimate and genuine, they should have no problems here.
Yeah. Is there anything else that a small business sole trader should be looking at, ways to save or increase inflows from any accountancy perspective?
Well, again, this is questions I have all the time, and unfortunately there's no magic wand to fix the situation we're in at the moment. I think it is the combination of things. I mean, the combination of potentially looking at the bounce back loan, looking at if it would be too late now if anybody hasn't already furloughed their spouse under the current deadline. The deadline was 30th of October, but if somebody has been paying a spouse salary, then that's something that could be looked at in terms of furloughing. Nobody knows what the future holds, but it might be worth putting a spouse on the payroll anyway, just in case a third furlough scheme comes into force in the future. There's an excuse for an accountant not to advise about the first one, because no one knew about it until it came out. Arguably, an accountant wouldn't have known it was going to be extended to then advise. But I think now, I think any accountant, should be saying to their client, hang on a second, I think we should provision now for, and put legitimate things in place to protect you from the future. The key issue, Stu, is there's lots of things an accountant could do. An accountant could sit there and go through management accounts and micro-manage, identify savings, but then you have the counteractive problem. This advice costs money. And the average small sole trader, I wouldn't suggest or recommend that they need to pay for a platinum plated, monthly management account service, because actually they're then spending more money than they're potentially saving. So you have to then strike that balance. But it all goes back to sounding board. I don't need to spend hours. I don't need a client to pay me for hours of my time to go through management accounts. But if they just want to, business can be lonely, and just using like the hub and accountancy firms as a sounding board, talking to other peers, can all be very useful.
It sounds very similar to the advice we gave at the Open. Don't struggle on in dreaded silence. Go and talk to the support network, and that includes knocking on your accountant's door, picking up the phone and saying, hey, is there anything that I'm doing that I could change, or is there something that I don't know about that I need to know about, and get some of that professional advice?
Well, I would say the biggest mistake I've seen, and perhaps it'll be even more significant during this COVID period, is people leaving it to the last minute to ask the advice. Because I tell you now, there is nothing more frustrating, and it makes me feel really sad for the client when somebody comes to you because now they literally are on the brink, and you think, if only they'd spoken to me 6 months earlier, we could have done this, and they missed doing that, and that was obvious, and they didn't do that. and they didn't claim that, and that's why they've got this tax bill. And oh my goodness, now HMRC is sending debt collectors to their front door, and that whole issue could have been avoided with a discussion with them 4 months. So always suggest. Again, I've always say, we follow the rules, we follow the regulations, but I'm not employed by HMRC or the government. I work for the clients. I'm there to advise clients to the best of my ability and to put their interests first. And when a client comes to me with a problem, I will, to the best of my ability and in good faith, attempt to resolve that for them.
I had a bit of a realization yesterday that in 2007, when the credit crunch hit, in fact, for me, it affected and basically disabled my business in 2008. And I have been through a lot of a lot of small businesses are currently going through: the cessation of business, the customers sort of going quiet, projects dropping off, people cancelling. And what I did very early on, and looking back on it, I don't know, maybe it was just intuition. I was running on pure instinct. The two things that I think helped us recover as quickly as we did was, one, accept the change rather than sitting and thinking, oh, this will all blow over in a few months, we'll just keep going head down, it'll be fine. Adapt to the change now. Think about what you need to do now. And the second one was, I went and spoke to my accountant and said, what do I do? Just, all of that. And they were brilliant. They just sort of said, calm down, we can do this, we can defer that, we can push that off, we can claim back for this. It was really nice to feel like somebody was in my corner. And I think that is the underlying message at the moment, is you need help and some business support. Go and talk to your accountant if you are worried about any aspect of your business finances, and they should be able to at least formulate a plan going forward with you.
I should say as well, though, that, and this is where it becomes very interesting, because obviously a lot of what the government have done this year is defer tax. So those who pay a self-assessment second payment on account in July, that was deferred. Those who pay VAT, that was deferred earlier in the year till next year. And I would put to you that a lot of HMRC was overworked to start with. It's been overworked pretty much ever since I've been in the industry. It's going to be completely swamped now with people in debt. So, and the truth is that the government haven't put all these policies in place to defer tax, only to see those businesses crushed and toppled over a year later. So my guess is logic and common sense says they'll look to support. And already there's an ability, and again, I don't know if people know this, to actually automatically request a payment plan for the self-assessment tax that's due in January. So I believe you can already log on to your self-assessment account or contact your accountant and automatically request that your payments are paid over 12 months. So and the government have got to do that, because otherwise people are going to just drown in debt, and it will defeat the object of having postponed those payments. And I would suggest the same for corporation tax. If you're a company, to call up, they're going to be very fair. It's worth noting, of course, if you're a limited company, you can carry losses forward. So if, for example, if you owe £10,000 in corporation tax that you do not have, but you know that you're going to be owed £5,000 of that back the following year, where you've perhaps made a loss, it's worth having that conversation with HMRC and saying, look, there's no point in me scrabbling 10k to give you, only for you to give me 5k back next year. Can I set up a long-term payment plan that means by the time the payment plan gets to the point where I'd start paying that part, it's been given back to me.
I think the moral of the story is, Andy, don't put your head in the sand.
No, definitely don't.
It's literally,
you can be proactive. You can be proactive. People are scared to speak to. I say to clients, exactly. I'll deal with that at a later date, on a rainy day. I say, no. Let me call them on your behalf now. Yeah. I'll call them now, and we'll sort this now. We'll get this sorted. We'll get a payment plan put in place today. Don't wait till they're sending debt collectors to your door. You don't need to. Exactly. They're actually, dare I say, quite reasonable when you ask for payment plans, in my experience.
They are.
This is a massive topic, and
really
I'm sure we could sit and discuss variations on this, well, until after lunch, and we don't have that luxury. So what I would like to do is say to everyone here, thank you, Andy. Thank you for coming along and sharing your insights about what's going on in the world of accounting at the moment, and what small businesses can do, and the questions they possibly should be asking their accountant. Come back in 15 minutes at, what's that, 49. We'll call it 50. We'll round it up for metric. We'll call it 10 to 11. We'll be back to discuss all of what we've just heard from Andy, answer all of your questions. If you've got any specific examples that you have a problem with, then we can talk around those. I'm sure Andy is guided by many professional caveats that it comes with. He doesn't know your business, he doesn't know all of the elements around it, but as we say at the start, the common sense aspect of this, maybe a more in-depth one-to-one with your accountant will reveal, but at least you'll go armed with the questions to ask. Come back at 10 to 11 and we'll see you then. Thank you so much.
Can I just say, Andy, I love your enthusiasm. I have to say, you're so enthusiastic about it.
Well, do you know what?
And your passion comes through.
Well, thanks for saying that. I mean, the point is, I do, I've had some very, very distressed clients on the phone to me, and people are not numbers to me; they're real people. And I know what it's like, and I'm very happy to share this. Need not be a secret. There have been a couple of times in my business life when it has been wobbly. There was one time, and I say this now laughing, but it wasn't funny at the time. So about 10 years ago, I was physically ill with stress and worry, thinking that the business was going to topple over. And when you're lying in bed and you're thinking all these things buzzing round and not knowing where to turn or what to do. And I was still in my 20s at that point. It's not pleasant, and it's very well. I wish I could go back in time now. The business is stronger than ever today. And dare I say, I've lost some clients, but I've got a varied client bank, and I'm okay. Fingers crossed. But if I could go back in time and tell myself that, then great. But I can't. And so, it doesn't come easy. And I think sometimes people see us as business owners and think we're living the life of Riley constantly. And yes, there are plenty of positive aspects, and I do love it, but it has come at a price along the years. Well,
your enthusiasm certainly shows through, and we're going to carry on that enthusiasm in a few minutes. So if we end the chat here, and we'll see you all. Remember, it's a meeting, and we will see you all in about 15 minutes.